Hey everybody, it's ENDYMION, and as you all know, Concord has officially been taken offline as of Friday, September 6, 2024. The game has had a shorter lifespan than the average fly that's currently circling a pile of garbage right now, if you can believe it. But this catastrophic failure has not gone unnoticed, and now journalists across the spectrum are trying to rack their heads to understand what exactly went wrong. And now even the character artists who worked on Concord are beginning to point fingers and get really angry as well. So like I said, these people are not happy, so let's see what's going on with Concord right now. Of course, we also know that there's really nobody they can blame but themselves when it comes to what has been made. I mean, nobody but them decided to make the characters the way they wanted to. We never asked for dollar store Guardians of the Galaxy, yet here we are. So this story comes from Reddit, but it compiles tweets made by a person who works at Firewalk as a character artist. Don't harass this person, by the way, even though they've already gone and blocked me on Twitter, even though I've never spoken or interacted with them even once. So this already tells me they're probably mad salty, but hey, don't blame me, blame yourselves for making the slop that you guys ended up with. Because I didn't tell you to put old grandmas and they-themers wearing boxes on their heads. So the Reddit post in question is titled, "Allegedly Senior Concept Artists for Concord are going through an extremely difficult time, and some might no longer want to work in games or design characters after this." I can already hear many of you saying, "Oh no, anyway," but yeah, I mean, you're right. Again, it's not your fault when it comes to these character designs. Like, look at this one design here. How were people paid to make this and they all unanimously went, "Oh hell yeah, people are gonna love this design. This looks like a parody." Actually, Concord in general just kind of looks like the sort of game that you'd see some kid playing in the background of a sitcom. But the game itself isn't real or anything, like it was made in a day or two. That's the vibe I get when I look at the game. I mean, at least the environments are nice, I guess, so kudos to the environmental artists on Concord. At least someone who worked there knew what they were doing, but too bad when it comes to the characters though. Anyway, this Amanda person who worked on Concord, they had a few things to say via Twitter. And this all started when another artist on Twitter who goes by Forrest said this: "Kinda wanna try to redesign one of the Concord characters, not to fix art or any pretentious BS. Just as an experience to see if I can find where it went wrong in the designs. Also, it sounds like a fun thing to draw. I love Guardians of the Galaxy looking stuff." Then this Amanda person who works at Firewalk responded to this Forest user. She said, or they said, I have no idea man these days, and I quote, "I was going to DM you after seeing this, but this site makes me pay to do that, so at the risk of getting dogpiled, I'm just going to say this here. A lot affected the art side of Concord, including design by committee, failure of some leadership to listen to the art team, etc. The character concept art team, including myself, is going through an extremely difficult time emotionally. And some on the team no longer want to work in games, design characters, or even do art anymore after this. Because of this, posts like yours, though understandable, are unfortunately ill-timed. None of us know which way the wind will blow at the studio. We are worried sick and terrified of the future. Not only that, but we have been shouldering the brunt of emotional labor as executives and directors dodge most of the blame." Behind the scenes of all of this talk about Concord and character designs, people's livelihoods are at risk and there are very real financial consequences that might hurt us even more. That's just what I can say from our point of view. I'm not saying change course or anything us artists like being able to use social media to promote our work and get more jobs. But I am saying that we see this, and it does absolutely affect us since we just got our teeth kicked in, end quote. So as you just heard, it looks like the Concord character artists are definitely not taking the closure of the game very well at all, and that's putting it lightly. And look, I understand being disappointed that something you worked so long has come out and has already been shut down. Because despite how poorly Concord has done, the truth is that this level of closure this quickly is quite literally unprecedented. I actually can't think of a single game where this sort of response has led to what has happened here. My only other comparison, I guess, would be Final Fantasy XIV. which launched in a very poor state. It got taken offline and then it got reworked for years until it eventually came back as a Realm Reborn. And now Final Fantasy XIV is pretty much Square Enix's mega cash cow that has made them so much money that is pretty much the most profitable Final Fantasy of all time. However, what happened with Final Fantasy XIV is very obviously an anomaly. Not every game is able to bounce back in such an incredible way like that. Another good example is No Man's Sky, which has more than redeemed itself since launch. But in No Man's Sky's case at least, it's both a single player and multiplayer game kind of, whereas Concord, obviously, is a strict 6v6 first-person shooter game, so player counts need to exist, otherwise you can't play the damn thing in the first place. Now, do I think Concord will have a Final Fantasy XIV resurgence? No, I don't think so. I think the most likely scenario here is Sony lays everyone off, they close the studio, and I wager the reason why Sony refunded the game was actually a very smart move on their part. Let me explain. Because you see, what companies can do when something isn't working like this, as long as the product made hasn't generated any income, it can hypothetically be written off as a tax write-off. Remember Batgirl, which was supposed to be released on HBO Max, but it was allegedly so bad that Warner Bros. Deemed it brand damaging, and instead of releasing it, they did a tax write-off? It's like that. But Warner couldn't do that if they released the film onto Max, because then Batgirl being available to watch for like even a day technically, that would be making some sort of profit from ads or subscriptions to Max. Concord is very similar, and yes, you're right, people did buy the game technically as well. However, because Sony refunded everyone their money, this loophole then could allow them to pull a Batgirl and get a certain percentage of the money they spent on it back in tax returns. Not 100% mind you, but something is obviously better than nothing. Although, this is also a very weird situation, since obviously people own physical copies of Concord too, which were bought with money as well, of course. So I don't know if the physical discs existing and being bought end up affecting the tax write-off idea, but there you go, now you know. But that's what I honestly think will happen. I don't see this game being salvageable at all. It just didn't make any sense, and it had no clear audience. Obviously, I feel for the devs who will probably lose their jobs, and as this Amanda person said, she believes that the negative response should be directed at the executives. Which I agree, I mean, they sign off on everything, but let's be real guys, the character artists are not innocent in this either. Someone had to create these abominations, and real human beings sat there for 8 full years, mind you, looking at these designs and went, oh hell yeah, this looks amazing, people are gonna love it. But I think the reason why they thought it would slap is because Concord was made in a vacuum per se. They started making the game in 2016. We were entering a time at that point where the political side of the world, well, it was exploding to say the least. I mean, Trump was elected in 2016, and to say that the liberal side of the aisle went crazy, that was a massive understatement. Since then, of course, all entertainment media went from being nebulous when it came to their political angle mostly, to suddenly being very pro-liberal and anti-conservative. And then from 2016 going into 2020 especially, this is where the whole woke movement, I guess, that really started to take off. And a lot of money was exchanging hands during the pandemic with ESG funds, which by the way, were the cheapest available grants at the time, which explains why so much identity politically driven content was being made from 2020 onward. Yeah, this would have affected Concord as well, because a lot of woke liberal weirdos then got into gaming, and clearly a ton of them are working at Firewalk Studios. Need I remind you of the non-binary dev who demanded everybody call them the professor, or how another one of its artists, whose name is John Wisniewski, was very anti-Trump on Twitter, which I covered in my other Concord videos already. Actually, that John Wisniewski guy was in the spotlight recently too, from that Park Place. Concord lead character designer John Wisniewski claims the game being shipped at all is legendary after game was shut down in less than 2 weeks. John said, and I quote, "To all the players who showed up for Concord, thank you. The positivity and constructive feedback in the face of overwhelming noise was huge for everyone at Firewalk. Building a positive community was why we did this. We saw you. Every stream, post, thread, emoji, we saw it all. Firewalk is packed with tenacious fighters, multiple acquisitions, an engine upgrade, Unreal Engine 4 to 5, global pandemic, project delays. The fact we shipped at all is legendary. None of us know what's next, but I do know this team is capable of wild energy when faced with a challenge." End quote. Well, John, I think I speak for many when I say I don't believe you for a second. Can Firewalk even make games? Sure, I guess. But clearly, not a good one that could sustain itself. The only thing Firewalk achieved was making the most expensive beta test in history. 2 weeks of shelf life for a game that was made for $100 million plus or more is abysmally bad. There's no other way to put it. Even Black Myth Wukong only costed around $70 million USD according to sources. Firewalk is clearly capable of only one thing, and that is burning money, and really nothing else. I don't think these guys realize how bad this has been for them, because circling back to that Amanda character artist person for a second, think about it, guys. Imagine if Firewalk does close down, okay? What happens then? Obviously, these devs will then try to get other jobs. Like I said previously, I'm sure the environmental artists will land on their feet because objectively speaking, they did their jobs. I also think the people who actually worked on the gameplay, like the gunplay, they will probably do fine too. I mean, they are ex-Bungie and such. And I think everyone who worked at Firewalk that did everything besides working on the characters or the story will probably do fine. But imagine you're a recruiter or something at some game publisher, and you get a resume for a character artist. And it says that they worked on Concord for 8 years, making the characters. Would you really want to hire that person knowing that the last time they were given the chance that they tanked an entire studio and delivered the worst received live service game of all time? Because you would have to be crazy to give them a chance again. The people who worked on Concord's character designs, they would need to prove that they actually know what they're doing. And I mean, they need to provide proof of concept with designs that aren't ugly freaks in the worst designs that we've ever seen. Like, my god, what the hell is that, dude? I also think the director of this game is likely cooked too. You can see him in the dev diaries at times. Again, you directed this game for 8 years, and you thought that every decision made was the right one, and then were confident enough to deliver this to Sony and say that this is worth the money that people will spend on it. Who in their right mind is going to want to give you the chance to direct anything ever again? In Hollywood, if you made something that flopped this badly, they would blacklist you back in the day. Of course, these days, even if you flop, as long as you have the right politics, you can still work to a degree. So I guess maybe as long as the director of Concord says all the right political talking points when they go to the next studio, maybe someone somewhere will be dumb enough to hire them too. But if I was a producer or an executive and I saw anyone with the name Concord on their resume, I would just use it as toilet paper when I drop a log instead of hiring them. Because there has to come to a point where we need to realize that actions have to have consequences. I'm not saying these people should be blacklisted entirely, but you can't sit there saying that Concord's reception makes you not want to work in the industry anymore and then blaming people for not buying it when you actively spent years on what's available there in the first place. I can't believe nobody in those 8 long years took a good look at these designs and went, hey guys, maybe we don't need to have an Asian grandma as a playable character in our hero shooter game. Or I don't know, maybe Dog could not be an overweight guy with the worst clothing design ever conceived. The point of hero shooters is people embrace the heroes. That's why it's in the name. And when the heroes have good designs, people will be more receptive and willing to spend money to play dress up with them because they identify with or love that character. A great example of a stellar design that has pretty much unlimited possibilities is D.Va from Overwatch. She's a cute South Korean mecha pilot. Her base original design is objectively already great. And the added bonus of her having this mech that she pilots, that just ends to the endless possibilities of what you can do with her designs in the future. By having that great base design amongst other heroes as well, you can then give players cool alternatives that they can then buy. Because this is what good hero design looks like. She's fit, she's cute, and she's unique looking. Nothing on Concord's side comes close to D.Va, or hell, even Symmetra, who's another design that I objectively think is great too. The way they weaved her heritage into her design but kept her futuristic, yeah, it's great. And again, because she looks good from the outset, it means people will be willing to buy stuff to dress her up because the potential of what can be is already there. The only designs I think anyone would be interested in with Concord is other PlayStation mascot designs. Because yeah, I could see a Nathan Drake inspired suit for say Lennox, the lizard green guy working well. or obviously a Kratos skin for that Star Child guy. Yeah, that goes without saying, that would work really well too. But one potential skin idea is not enough to make up for the rest of the abysmal cast, because sure, DAW exists, but why the hell would I want to spend money when the base model is so god-awful anyways? Unfortunately, the majority of Concord's cast, which is the lifeblood and heart of the franchise and the hero shooter here, they were just dead on arrival. You can put as much makeup as you want on a pig, at the end of the day, it's still a freaking pig, you get me? Then of course there's websites like Wired with their articles titled, "Concord's Death Offers a Bleak Look at Gaming's Future." This article feels really out of touch and seems to omit why the game has failed, instead claiming that it was a victim of greedy executives and not generating enough money out of the gate, which I mean, yeah, that's obviously part of it because products need to make money to justify their existence because, you know, that's how the world works. But here, let's look at it another way, okay? Imagine if Black Myth Wukong was an employee and Concord was also an employee at the same place. Both employees' jobs are to make money for the company. Wukong is killing it and they're bringing in the profits, but Concord is making nothing in comparison. So now you're in a position to cut what's not working as like a manager or something. Do you allow Concord to continue, seeing based on the analytics that it's doing abysmally bad? Or do you keep it, knowing that full well that Wukong costed less and is far exceeding any and all expectations? Any sensible person would axe Concord, but of course Wired thinks Concord should have been given at least 6 months to a year to really find its footing. But no, I disagree. If you release something and it does this badly, you axe it. There's no other alternative here. It's not free to keep servers up to allow players to play. Profit needs to happen in order to keep things moving. You can't pay your mortgage or rent on good vibes or thoughts and prayers. You need to pay in order to keep your place. Concord is the equivalent to a hippie living in your house who does nothing, makes nothing, and just eats all your food and wastes your resources. I know the characters are free gunners in Concord, but the game itself was a goddamn freeloader of Sony's goodwill and server space. Of course, Wired ignores all of this and instead talks to people that reinforces their views. Apparently, Concord was good because it was inclusive. I'm not kidding either. They asked some content creator who played the game that I never heard of who said, "One of the biggest perks about the game was the absence of toxicity within the player community," says KD's Games. Again, I've never heard of this person. They could be fake for all I know. But it's not surprising your game has very little toxicity because obviously nobody was playing the damn thing anyways to begin with. Never mind toxicity, there wasn't even enough people to fully fill up lobbies so people could even play together. You're celebrating the wrong wins here, guys. One analyst who I referenced in a previous video also commented on this article too and said, "It's unprecedented for a game at this scale to be shut down so quickly," says Liam Dean, a video game analyst at Omdia. "Usually publishers keep games that struggle and launch on life support for a while, but in Concord's case, the launch was so bad, there was clearly no way back." Thank you, Liam, for actually telling the truth in the article, since Wired's journalists refused to actually say what needed to be said. Honestly surprised that they even let Liam say what he did, and it stayed in the article as well. Of course, the PlayStation Lifestyle article, which covers a similar topic to Wired's, had another analyst named Matt Piscatella, who I've mentioned before, who just says it how it is. He said, "On the one hand, the game and the IP were just so soundly rejected that one may think it unsalvageable, and I think what Piscatella says here is true. I just don't see Concord being salvageable in the future. The entire franchise that lasted 2 weeks before it was taken out back and given 2 mercy shots in the head is the antithesis of what you want from your so-called next big franchise shooter. It does confuse me since Sony has other shooter franchises that they can pull from like Killzone or Resistance. Of course, some may say, well, they wanted their own Fortnite-like kid-friendly shooter, which is why Concord is what it is. But I think you could easily reimagine Killzone or Resistance to be more PG-13 than say R-rated just fine. Also, Fortnite is not E for everyone anyways, it's PG-13 as well. I think we should end this Concord stuff in general with this article which came out around the time the game first launched from PC Gamer. Concord devs reflect on the last 8 years of development. We don't get a lot of launch days in our careers. And I think this single paragraph shows the dissonance between what Concord's devs thought they had versus what they were actually holding in their hands. John, yet again, said via PC Gamer, Obviously, it's a group effort, and having a seat at the table with others who inspire you and push you to do your best is a tremendous privilege. Wisniewski continues, that trust gave the game so much identity. Concord has so much humanity and depth to it. I really hope people give it a shot. Insanely proud of the game. We're strapped in and ready to push it for years to come. Oh god. For years to come. Oh my god, dude. And all it amounted to was 2 weeks at best. That's crazy. But hey, this is why it matters more than ever that you respect the customer and stop delivering slop with identity politics. Even the fans had more to say as to how they felt about Concord. One user said, 8 years, that's the best you could come up with. 8 years to think of character designs, and you created some of the most ugly, bland, boring designs that's ever been seen in a video game. You've got to be kidding. Imagine still thinking it's a good game. Another said, gamers don't care about the struggle of development. It doesn't matter how hard it was or what challenges you went through. All we care about is the end result. You were in charge of these character designs, and you didn't do your job. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. And I think this one was scathing, but it needed to be said. You made dollar store Overwatch with the 99-cent store Guardians of the Galaxy. Anyone with 2 functioning brain cells knew this game was toast from the drop. Your team had 8 years and you came up with that. You need to take a good, hard look at this catastrophic failure and ask the single most important question you can ask. What went wrong? Not blame the audience who never showed up or the one that hated the designs from the drop. Ask yourselves, why didn't this game land with anyone but the tiny minority of woke psychopaths? Then, and only then, you might be able to make something worth playing. I mean, harsh words, yes, but they're true. I also just want to finish this video by stating that it is not that players don't want feature-complete live service games. I mean, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is here, and I beat the campaign recently, and I'm currently playing the multiplayer part of the game right now. And that game is a very strong example of what players actually want from multiplayer-like games. Firstly, it has a campaign. Concord could have benefited greatly from a narrative-driven campaign where we actually got to learn who these characters are, where they come from, and what the galaxy surrounding them is actually like. Instead, you get these small cutscenes each week, mind you, telling you small bits. And since the game only lasted 2 weeks, that means that there's, God knows, how many unreleased cutscenes that are just sitting on some dev's computer now, not being released, yet they're already fully completed, mocapped, and everything else. Concord needed a single-player mode. Maybe not a full-fledged open-world game, although that would have saved it for sure, but at least a Call of Duty-esque campaign, something, anything, than the absence of it altogether, and the game could have benefited from some PvE content, because Space Marine 2, for example, they have operations. They're kind of like strikes in Destiny 2 pretty much. You run through these story missions, killing stuff and leveling up, and then Concord could have needed something like that, but instead, you launched a $40 6v6 shooter in a sea of free-to-play games with stronger identities and far more content on offer already. Like these users have already said before in this video, the devs have no one to blame but themselves. Concord lived and died the way that it did because the people who made it really thought players would slurp up their woke identity slop like good pigs. But as the rest of the games industry is learning, that is not the case anymore. The character artists can be mad all they want. Nobody outside of that studio told you to make those characters look at the way that they do. Nobody told you to make We Have Guardians of the Galaxy at home. You did that. So whatever ends up being the fallout of the situation, it does not fall on the player's shoulders to carry you when you refuse to give them what they want. Concord deserves all the disdain and rejection it has received, and the only future for now is for Sony PlayStation to look down upon it and whisper, Exterminatus. Concord is dead, move on, don't blame others. I would say learn from this, but woke people never learn anything from failure, because they're kind of immune to seeing their own faults in anything. So, let's keep going guys, never falter, and let's change this industry one game at a time. Thank you for watching, subscribing and such. Thanks to my members and patrons. Have a wonderful day. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go rip aliens in half with my Space Marine and rearrange their anatomy with my chainsword. And I'll see you in the next one.